Chapter 18 for Principles of Accounting 2. In Chapter 18, we introduced process costing. In Chapter 17, we talked about job costing. And now we're going to move over to the other main costing system called process costing. Our cost accounting systems help us control cost, plan for how much we're going to produce of our goods and services, what goods and services we're going to offer, pricing our products. So process costing is how we accumulate our direct and indirect costs of production across identical units that are mass produced. So remember in job costing in Chapter 17, we trace our job costs to individual jobs. So direct labor and direct material to those specific jobs, and then we allocate overhead costs using an activity-based. This is because job costing is a specialized costing method that works best for unique jobs and service organizations. Process costing is used for mass production manufacturing. So examples of what is good for each kind of costing system. So job order costing is used in service industries, individual places where you can customize things, so furniture building, automotive repair, house construction, so anything in which we can customize a product. Process costing is ideal for mass-produced things, packaged food products that have all the same process for canning or bottling. Oil, gas, paint, textiles, televisions. There are multiple things that get mass produced. In job order costing, we have different amounts of direct materials for each job. We use different amounts of direct labor on each job. They're unique products or services. We have low volume, and they're often custom ordered or specific to the client who has ordered the product or service. In process costing, our products are identical. We have an identical amount of direct materials and direct labor that get used in each product. We have repetitive processes or operations that look identical across every product line, and we create high volume. When we're looking at manufacturers in general, we have this little snippet of information here from the textbook. So we surveyed 141 manufacturers and show that 51% of them use job costing, 14% use process costing, and 11% use a combination of costing methods, usually called a hybrid costing system. The same survey shows that direct materials costs are 47% of total costs, followed by overhead costs and direct labor. However, as companies become more automated and we use more robotic manufacturing, the overhead costs continue to increase as direct labor costs decrease. The more automated that we create our process and our manufacturing, the more likely we are going to use process costing. When we're looking at process costing, we have specific steps in our manufacturing process. We look at each process individually. So we might have an assembly process and a packaging process. We're going to look at each process's costs individually. We measure the cost of goods manufactured in total and on a per unit basis. Remember, when we have our cost of goods manufactured, that's the amount that we use for valuing our work in process and finished goods inventory. And then the cost that our items cost or our products cost gets recorded when we sell that product from cost of goods sold. Costing information also provides management with information that they need to make decisions. We get the per unit cost for performing each step in the production process. This helps us to evaluate the efficiency of our production department, shows us where we might have cost savings potentially, shows us which product lines are most profitable. We are also going to look at capacity, how much we're going to price based on how much our production costs. So when we're looking at the physical flow of production costs, in job order costing, we have direct materials, direct labor, and factory overhead recorded to jobs. Those jobs sit in work in process while they are in production. Once a job is finished, it gets transferred to our finished goods inventory and is available for sale. Under process costing, we have direct materials, and then we have our conversion costs of direct labor and factory overhead that go into processes of production. Those processes are kept in our work in process account as we are in the production process. Once items are finished, they are transferred from work in process inventory to finished goods inventory, where they are held until they are sold. So we have an example of how an item can flow through a production process. So we have a company from our textbook that goes through 3 different processes. We have a cutting department, which cuts large sheet metal into smaller forms of metal for assembly. That gets moved to our assembly department. After we've finished assembly, our items get transferred to the packaging department. The packaging department prepares items for shipping and sends them out to be shipped. So we have to know the number of units that are in 4 different categories when we're looking at process costing. We will have our beginning work in process, the number of new units we started during the period, and then the number of units that we transferred to the next department, and the number of units in ending work in process. So we would have beginning work in process. We add the number of units started during the period. That gives us the total number of work in process units we're keeping track of. Then we would subtract out the number of units we transfer to the next department in the process. And that leaves us with the number of units in our ending work in process. As we can see through these T accounts, we show the physical flows and the cost flows for process costing. So we begin work in process in the cutting department. So we have a work in process cutting department account. Well, in the cutting department, we add direct materials, direct labor, and overhead to that production. When we are finished with items in the cutting department, we transfer them out to the assembly department. In the assembly department, we might add more direct materials, more labor, and more overhead. We finish our work in the assembly department and transfer out to work in process packaging department. Once we finish items in the packaging department, they are transferred to finished goods inventory, where they sit awaiting sale.